everyone.
Hello and welcome. Welcome. I hope you are enjoying your 2021 Ashoka U Exchange. We are excited to present to you this afternoon. Our session is entitled 1 + 1 = 29, Scaling a Global Competition Through the Power of Partnership. We would like to welcome you here today. In this session, we are going to share our bird's eye view of our working relationship co-managing a very large global competition. And we'll highlight some of our best practices, things we've learned along the way about capacity building and how we share knowledge among our two teams. And I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Jessica Cooley. I am Senior Director of the Schultz School of Entrepreneurship at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. And I oversee all of our co-curricular programming at the University of St. Thomas. So we are very motivated to bring entrepreneurship across our campus. And I help lead the charge in that area. I'd now like to turn it over to my co-presenters to introduce themselves. So I'll turn it over to Juliet Zimmer.
Hi, everyone. My name is Juliet Zimmer. I am the coordinator here at the University of San Diego for the Center for Peace and Commerce. And we are just thrilled to be here presenting with our wonderful colleagues over at St. Thomas University and excited for today's session. And I'll introduce my colleague, Nanaya.
Hi, everyone. So good to meet you and really have you joining us today. My name is Nanaya Banka, and I work at the University of St. Thomas at the Schultz School of Entrepreneurship, managing what we call our Fowler competitions, one of which is the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge that we'll be highlighting today. Really excited to be able to work on a competition that really brings in the innovation of students around the world. So I'm looking forward to learning together today. Thank you.
Yeah, and before we get started, we would, although this isn't as interactive as we hoped it would be, we are very motivated to use the chat to get some engagement going. So if you're able to, please type in your name in the chat, which university you're coming from, where it's located, and then also what brought you to this session here today, and is there anything in particular you'd like to learn more about? And we'll try to make sure that we answer everyone's questions today. So if you could take a moment and put that in the chat, we would love to get a little bit of engagement going in this session before we get started. All right, well, to set the stage for our presentation, I'd really like to turn it over to my colleague Juliet from the University of San Diego to tell you a little bit about our journey to get here today.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So this competition was first started as the Global Social Innovation Challenge. It was started in 2011, and it was started, I learned this year, as a student initiative. So it really was a student-propelled program that was brought to life. Our first couple years were just limited to USD students. So that was undergraduate and graduate students of any college on our campus. And then we had a couple periods of growth. So for the first 2 years, as I mentioned, it was just us. In 2014, we expanded to welcome universities in San Diego. So namely UC San Diego and San Diego State. We then expanded to be binational. We are a border community here in San Diego, a very proud border community with one of the most trafficked borders in the world, bordering San Diego and Tijuana. So, of course, we wanted to incorporate our friends across the border at universities in Tijuana. And then in 2018, we expanded to be a global competition, welcoming universities from not only around the world, not only around the States, but around the world, which we were absolutely thrilled to do. And so that's kind of the evolution and the growth that we have seen over the past couple years.
Thanks, Juliet, for setting that stage. And of course, as you probably all know, big programs like this really aren't possible without the generous support of donors. Unless you're able to get grants or the university funds you in some way, a lot of times programs of this size really can't happen without generous support of benefactors. And as is true for this program, Ron Fowler is our generous donor who supports our initiatives. And if you aren't familiar with Ron, let me tell you just a little bit about him. Ron is the CEO of Liquid Investments, which is a San Diego-based beverage distributor, and he's also the vice chairman of the San Diego Padres. But Ron's special interest is really in higher education and supporting our initiatives. In addition to supporting the University of San Diego and the University of St. Thomas with this Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge, Mr. Fowler has generously supported a number of entrepreneurial endeavors at the two universities, as well as San Diego State University. He is the founding donor of the Fowler Business Concept Challenge, which we've now run on our St. Thomas campus for well over a decade. And this competition is, we kind of call it our entry-level competition. It's really meant to energize the entrepreneurial spirit of students across disciplines on our campus. And so you might be asking, well, why St. Thomas and San Diego? Why did Ron have this idea of putting our two universities together? Well, he saw a lot of similarities between the schools, and this will come out later in our presentation, how important these things are. Firstly, we're both Catholic universities, but moreover, we really have similar missions and values. We both have commitment to the common good and building ethical leaders. And Ron really saw our university, our partnership here as a way to build capacity, scale, and expand those opportunities. Mr. Fowler is especially passionate about social impact and empowering the next generation of leaders to make an impact on the globe. So I'm in Ron's own words, our vision for the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge is to significantly increase the number of social entrepreneurs creatively tackling humanity's biggest problems. So if that's not a big charge, I don't know what is. No pressure, right? But we are up to the challenge. So since the competition's inception in 2011, the FGSIC has achieved a number of milestones, and I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Nanaya to tell you a little bit more.
Great, thank you, Jessica. So one really exciting thing about this challenge is that while we engage universities around the world, as you've seen and we'll be talking about in more detail, it really also affords a lot of flexibility. So before I talk about our numbers, just want to take a step back and tell you what exactly is this challenge and how do we go about engaging students and university leads and administrators around the world. So basically, we invite students to engage with one or more of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Everything that we do is really based off that. And the next level from there is really allowing students to take one step at a time, the steps that they would need to be able to build a social venture. And one of the most important is really tackling the problem. So instead of having them jump into a solution, in round one, we ask students to really think through and almost apprentice with and sit with that problem area that they want to explore. So in round one, all students are invited to do this across campus, different timelines as it fits with each university's schedule and programming. And then in round two, students get to explore then the solution that they've decided to come up with to tackle that problem they identified in round one. And then also at that stage, sometimes universities will allow students to come together and pitch that venture to a group of judges within their own university campuses. And then finally, we gather at the end of every year in June for what we call the Global Finals, where students from all around the world come to pitch their social innovations. Each university is able to bring up to 2 teams to represent them. And to date, as you can see, we've had 68 participating universities since the inception of this challenge, 25 countries since it began. We've awarded over $500,000 in seed funding, and this has energized and ignited 1,100 social ventures. And we really, over the course of all these years, have a network of over 2,500 student entrepreneurs, social innovators. So it's really exciting to be able to be a part of this change, and of course to partner with the University of San Diego as well.
Thank you for setting the context there, Nania. So let's move on to talking a little bit more about our partnership. So a program of this size, obviously very complex, a lot of planning, you know, you get extra cooks in the kitchen and sometimes things can get kind of complicated. So let's really talk about what it takes to make this happen. And I'd like us to start with talking about the strategy. Take me back to the early days of the partnership. Let's talk big pictures. What were some of these strategic considerations when we first launched this partnership?
Sure. Yeah. The strategy, I would say, with Ron Fowler's wonderful gift, it tied our two universities together. So not only with this wonderful competition, but with the Fowler Business Concept Challenge. So the learning was in a multitude of different threads across both universities. Mm-hmm. I primarily run the Fowler Global Social Innovation Challenge, and another unit on campus heads up our Fowler Business Concept Challenge. So I do not envy Nanaya's job to be able to manage both of those competitions. A full plate, no doubt. As far as our strategy and vision, it was largely best practices, especially in the beginning, being able to have close communication with one another to share what are some best practices of how to engage and market to a global community, as well as through the Fowler Business Concept Challenge on how to really invest in students in that early concept phase. So supporting students and especially, supporting alumni, which is something that we're trying really hard to do a better job of, has been goals and kind of central grounding points for us. I'll turn it over to Nanaya to talk a little bit about the team and supporting that global network.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Juliet. And I'll just quickly to add on to what Juliet was saying on strategy and why and vision and goals there. Like Jessica said, we're adding cooks to the kitchen, right? And a lot of times we've joked behind the scenes that this is like a marriage, a marriage between two universities, or an arranged marriage, as Juliet put it. And it's interesting because really that gets to our why, right? Because you're bringing two universities together. Yes, there's a lot that we share in common, our values. Both of us, Ashoka Changemaker universities and campuses, very committed to the whole idea and vision of change making. But we implement that in different ways based on who we are as unique universities. And it's very interesting that Ron saw a common thread in that sense, because we complement each other and we're also different in some ways. So when we started this, it was really important that we're able to gather as a group and think through our why. And we did that, I believe, at a retreat, if I'm remembering correctly, in July 2019, where all of us, including Ron Fowler, which was awesome that he could be there as well. We did that over multiple days, and specifically one day when Ron was able to join, where we all shared in that vision building, because ultimately we want to empower student entrepreneurs and social innovators around the world to take an idea and build it from concept to reality, and resource them, bring the tools that they need, the network, the connections to make that possible. So that's really our vision. And then when we go back to some of the things that really, I think, drive that vision, there are 3 taglines that we really play up, and we talk about pushing boundaries, inspiring change, and building bonds. And those three things I would say would be the why that has brought both of us together as universities, to really build upon the vision of creating change makers around the world. And then from that, we were able to kind of think through our goals of how do we leverage what we both bring to the table in terms of relationships around the world with different universities, what we're already doing on campuses, and leverage best practices to grow this competition. Um, yeah, so I would say those are some of those the key things that really have kind of directed this arranged marriage. And it's been really an exciting, exciting 2, 3 years. Juliet and I specifically were brought onto the team, and we'll talk more about the team as well. We were brought onto the team to spearhead and lead the Fowler Global Challenge. So it's been very exciting working through some of those learnings, dynamics as well.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that team. You know, this is a big competition, and our team is really bigger than what you're seeing here today. So maybe you, Juliet and Nadia, you can tell us a little bit more about who's on the team. You know, how do you approach roles and responsibilities? Does it change depending on who's in charge that year? Talk a little bit about that division of labor and how you make it all work with a variety of players being involved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think really the strength of a challenge like this is that you can do it on your own. I mean, when you look at that vision that Ron set out, it's critical that we build not just local partners but global partners as well. So in a sense, I would say the team is the global network. That's what makes this possible. But then coming down from that, there's the university level team. Juliet touched on the fact that University of San Diego also has another Fowler competition that is based just for is targeted just for the university, and we have the same. So there's a lot of learning that happens across competitions, even though this is global and the other one is just for students within our campuses. And so we have that wider level team of our deans who participate in strategic level planning, all the faculty involved in the other Fowler program. And then also on this particular challenge, it really comes down to myself, Jessica, Juliet, Laura Dunham, the associate dean, to run the day-to-day tactical kind of things, and to move forward on actually executing some of the goals that we've identified for ourselves. And I mean, over the years, even in the short time we've been involved together, our team has evolved and grown in different ways, and we've really been learning through how do we complement each other in our various strengths as we figure out where we both play as universities. And we'll talk more about that, I guess, as we talk about going forward, the plans going forward as well. Juliet, do you want to add anything on the team?
Yes,
Building
sure.
aspect of things.
Yes, yeah. I echo everything that Nana and Jessica have said about teamwork and the concept of multiple cooks in a kitchen is so true in this way. And then kind of thinking about not only working in such a remote setting as we have been in the past year, but being on two separate universities, it's cooking independently and trying to make a smorgasbord of a meal that's enjoyable for everyone. So there is a lot of kind of cross communication. As far as working in your own university, and I think everyone can appreciate this, programs can be so siloed. And so the necessity of being able to reach across campus or across colleges to be able to get buy-in. We noticed here at USD that we had nearly half of our students who were applying to the program were from our engineering school. So of course we want to engage more and more and more with those professors, with those mentors, with those teachers, with those advisors to be able to support the students in a more meaningful way. what's unique about the program and how it's run here at USD is that we have the center is held by both our Peace School and our business school. So for me, when I'm looking at trying to get things approved or trying to get things, consensus and buy-in, I'm going through two channels, which can be beneficial to get advice and feedback, but also can kind of be labor and time exhaustive and cumbersome. So, being able to kind of have the ability to be agile is something that I'm working towards, to have the ability to be able to kind of innovate in the same way that we ask our students to innovate with their own innovations. We need to be able to kind of move with that type of flexibility as well. So that's something, as a pain point that I've certainly seen over the past couple, year and a half or so of being in this role and helping this challenge. With USD in particular.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Juliet, because it's not just, our team here building the global competition. We have things going on our own campuses and sort of a different subset of teams and team dynamics to work through. So it can get messy. There can be a lot of people involved, and we're sort of looking at each other like, okay, do we need to ask this person for approval? Can we go forward with this? And sometimes it depends on the day, right? If we need to do that or not. So as is such with teamwork. Well, and you guys are, go ahead.
And it's, as I'm sure, you have at St. Thomas, we're not the only program on campus. So yeah. It's as well as getting buy-in from our engineering school, for example, they have two programs themselves that are pitch competition. So just that layering of making sure that, we're competing for the same group of students and making sure that we're complementing each other instead of competing with one another.
That's very true. Yeah.
Well, so far you guys are making this sound all very rosy, this partnership. We've talked a little bit about some of the stressors that come along with a partnership, but let's dig in a little bit deeper. Let's talk about how the work actually gets done. Like, what's going on under the hood? What are some of the things that we've learned over time partnering? I think there were some surprises, right? You don't just put two universities together and go. We've encountered all kinds of different challenges with melding our brand, for example, melding our communication system. So I'm hoping you guys can talk us through a little bit more about the logistical considerations and some of the challenges and opportunities that we've encountered along the way as we've built the nuts and bolts of the partnership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can start. I think there's really a lot there, and I guess we'll go into as much detail as we can while being considerate of our time too. But I'll start with more just how we decided to structure things. And once we finished setting that goal, getting our vision, casting that vision in July 2019. One of the critical pieces to any relationship really is communication. And so internally, we had to put in some structure for communications, which we do, I would say, almost all the time, not just through emails, through phone calls, now, of course, through Zoom. We have a monthly meeting where we connect to basically catch each other up on what we're working on, the priorities and goals, see where we can support each other in reaching those goals as needed. But in between, a lot happens. And we've had to think through things like, how do we leverage a content sharing site that we could both have access to? So for example, building out things as simple, and it sounds very simple until you actually have to work across universities, but things like sharing content through Google Drive and building a brand image just for this competition. And I'll let Juliet talk more about that, coming up with a separate website that was specifically branded for the Fowler GSIC, and also working through what is the brand that we want to espouse as a challenge and as an experience for students. So we've had several team building team calls around these particular topics of our brand and thinking through how we infuse the brand elements of St. Thomas with the University of San Diego's branding as well, and still stay true to who each university is and what the program is about. So it's definitely been a bit of a dance, but over time we've kind of been able to touch on our branding, setting expectations for communication, and Juliet, I think there are other specific areas you can touch on as well with our
Sure.
specific logistics, internal at least.
Yes, yes. So, of course, I am preaching to the choir, and it is an experience that we all have. None of us anticipated this COVID pandemic lockdown experience. So that was absolutely a logistical consideration that each of us had to adapt to. And I, I also want to honor Nania and I were hired at just about the same time. I think I have
Yeah.
2 weeks on top of her, or 2 weeks before her. And by this time, we have worked more in our home offices remotely than we have on campus, and each of us have such a beautiful campus. So I know that I'm missing my campus work culture and experience, and I'm sure Nanaya, you are as well. So I just want to kind of honor that perspective of it, that there has continued to be a necessity to evolve and pivot within this environment. As Nania has also highlighted, we needed, just with the branding, we needed to be able to consider both color concepts, both topography concepts, both type of styles, and to be able to kind of mold those into two. So I think one of the most beneficial things that we did is hire a brand strategist. And that individual has been instrumental to helping us be able to position this competition in a way that is fresh and adheres to both of our university visions as well as our college visions of what this competition could be, not just what it is right now, but what it could be. And I think that was a really, really smart move. We have continued to engage with this individual, and that is definitely a point in which we are able to continue to tailor our marketing or refresh our website in a way to best adapt to serving the needs of our both our students and our administrators. So I think if your budgets, if you're doing something like this on your own home campus, whether it is coordinating across campus with another college or another center, another unit on campus, or potentially with another university, to be able to have somebody who's a little bit removed and an expert with that fine-tuned eye to be able to kind of help the conversation along. Of course, we have conversations offline to try to align our vision before engaging or throughout the process, but just being able to have somebody who understands the competition and the plans and the goals and can help us kind of move along has been really beneficial. I also want to honor the question that came in the chat. Worth the cost of coordination. In other words, should other institutions seek similar partnerships? Why or why not? I think yes, and of course I want to get other perspectives. I'm just one person here, but I think that you absolutely should seek other partnerships because you're so much stronger if you have buy-in. You're so much stronger if you have more than one set of eyes on it, a fresh look and a fresh perspective. One of the things that I think has been so exceptionally executed this year is the way in which Nanaya and Jessica have engaged our larger global network in monthly external webinars that are being hosted. So last year in the pivot after COVID, we hosted webinars, and it was something that by and large, after about 15 minutes of checking on a specific topic, we kind of just opened it up to Q&A. And it wasn't necessarily the best type of format. They've taken that concept of regular check-ins with our global network and really ran with it. They have been able to pull the expertise and something interesting that somebody in our global network is doing and sharing that out so that we can all learn from the incredible work that others are doing. I think that has been such a beautiful kind of flourish and growth in that type of relationship and how we're engaging in other markets or other networks. So if either one of you want to speak to that.
No, I think I would totally echo, and I would say it's been so worth it. I do believe that we uniquely have different strengths. We have different relationships as universities that we've brought to this. Um, for example, within the Schultz School of Entrepreneurship, which specifically runs this challenge, the Schultz School manages all the other competitions that students engage with at St. Thomas, which means that we have an eye on all that learning and can bring the experience, the lessons learned from all of that to a competition like this. On the same token, when I look at the University of San Diego and how they've planned and implemented their events, there's so much learning that we've been able to gain from the team at the Center for Peace and Commerce, and also the team that's running the Other Fowler competition, the Business Concept Challenge. So I do think that really it's that strength in numbers being shown here. And yes, it's not always smooth sailing, and things will have to go through some red tape, and there'll be some stall. I mean, it's just what it is. At the end of the day, it's human beings running this competition, right? So we bring that to some of the processes, but at the end of the day, I would say that it's really enriched both institutions, and honestly enriched this competition to have two players. And I also have to acknowledge that USD had done so much. They'd really built something formidable, and it's also great at the same time that Ron was able to see going forward, if we are to grow this thing, how do you bring in other players? And it was nice that there was that level ground of a shared vision and values with St. Thomas to be able to bring in what we've learned over the years working in social innovation. So should other institutions seek? Yeah, I think so, for sure.
Yeah, I would say it's not without significant work and frankly funding, right? I mean, it would be very difficult to pull this off without support. And I think we are very fortunate that our donor, he's very involved in the program, but he really trusts us to do the right thing and carry out his vision. And there were so many things that we didn't really think too deeply about when we first entered this until we really got into it. For example, the communications piece, Juliet wasn't able to access our systems. They're on, we use Microsoft, they use Google. I mean, so it's like, okay, we need something completely agnostic. And I mean, those are just things we didn't think about. Mm-hmm. And those things take time and they take money to put together. And we're fortunate to have a donor that understands that when you put two disparate universities together who have two different ways of doing things, and there's going to be some hurdles you just can't overcome within your own system and resources. And we've had to build things brand new, and again that costs money and it takes time. And a lot of donors don't like to pay for people, and we were very honest with Ron, and we just said, this is a huge undertaking, and believe it or not, our team has shrunk pretty considerably in the time since we've been working together. So we all have other things on our plate, other competitions, other programs that we're doing. So we just had that very honest conversation, which can be very difficult to have, but we're like, if this is going to be success and we're really going to fulfill the potential, we need people who are dedicated to making this all that it can be. And, to go back to the question, I think it's absolutely worth it. And while there's a lot of, like I said, ramp up time, the future potential it's massive. The capacity that we can build as a group, as Nanya said, we have different networks and different connections, but we can just do so much more together. And I think that's the most exciting part of our partnership and of coming together, is just the future potential. And we'll talk a little bit about that toward the close. We have some big dreams for this competition, and we really hope to see those through this partnership. So that's the only other thing I would add. But I'm wondering if you two want to speak a little bit about, how we've been supporting students, how year over year that work gets assigned, and maybe just get a little bit more into who owns what and when, and how you figure that out. Because again, clear communication is really important, and we want to make sure we're serving our partners. So we need to know what our roles and responsibilities are so we can do that. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more about, how we support students, how we support advisors, who does what, and how that all comes about.
Mm-hmm. Julia, do you want to talk about students, and I'll tackle talking about advisors and universities?
Sure. Yes, let me first jump into students. One of the beautiful parts about this program is that it's adaptable. So the ways that we run it here at the University of San Diego might be a little bit different than how it's run at the University of St. Thomas, which might be a little bit different than how it's run at Australian Catholic University, which might be a little bit different than how it's run at Duke University, which might be a little bit different than how it's run at Jump Chile. So there's an evolution, or kind of a plug and play concept and adaptability that's exists within the framework of the competition. So the ways that we have set it up is through rounds, and of course administrators, which Nania will touch on, can kind of plug this competition into existing entrepreneurship competitions that they might be running on their own campus, or if they're just starting an entrepreneurship innovation hub at their campus. We have a couple universities that specifically tailor it to honors programs, or the graduate engineering program, for example. So we kind of scaled back and wanted to serve students broadly in kind of a wide and shallow capacity. So instead of going really deep and narrow, the wide and shallow. And I will say that our beautiful website is new, and we are continuing to tinker and tailor the ways in which we are serving our students through this platform. So over the summer, we worked hard on trying to put together a students page. I anticipate that this student page might look different for the competition next year. We're probably going to have additional resources or tools, maybe pull this one down and put this one up. One of our universities built an incredible template on Mural. It would be great to have something like that listed up there. And we just wanted to be able to kind of provide students with resources that we knew were helpful for each round of the competition, or the ways in which we kind of recommended the program be run on each campus. Throughout that student page is sprinkled with the check with your advisor to make sure that the requirements at this round are applicable to your university. But regardless, getting connected with the social business model canvas is going to be helpful to any student. And so that's a resource that we wanted to put online. Getting a better idea about what human-centered design is and getting connected with those type of resources is going to be beneficial to every student who's going through this process. So we've really tried to tailor and to support students in a on your own self-guided capacity. not only through the resources, through the past submission examples that we have online, but with partnerships that we've been able to forge. Acumen Academy is a wonderful example of a great library of online resources. And that's something that we have sprinkled throughout our student resource page as well. So I expect and anticipate with the growth of this competition that that page will also grow, be a little bit more streamlined, maybe a little bit more targeted. We will see. We certainly will see.
And if I can just add, this is kind of part of a bigger strategy we have for this competition too. We want this to be much more than just an event, much more than just a competition. We're trying to share resources that students can use, not just in their venture, but in their life and in their courses and mindsets that will benefit them far beyond this competition. And that's really the vision we had as we were building these resources.
That's so true. And I think really that whole thing about the experience, we want it to be something that, yes, it's a challenge and a competition, but we want it to be an experience for students and something that creates hopefully value beyond the single event that they attend to pitch their particular venture. And we'll talk more about that too, I think, as we look forward to things like alumni support and really building a stronger network and making that network something that people can come back to over and over again in their lifetime as a social innovator too. And I wanted to speak specifically also on university support because without administrators or an advisor on campus to make this happen, this competition would not be possible. And that's why I said earlier on that the team is really the global network. Those advisors who've become the social entrepreneurship champions on their campuses, or the Fowler GSIC champions to say, I'm going to take this up because I believe there's value in it for my students to be involved. And I'll bring together the key players. I'll funnel it through a class, whatever that looks like. For St. Thomas, I specifically run this challenge. I take the lead on it, but not every university has a dedicated person to make it possible. And that's something we've kept in mind, and we continue to kind of keep in the back of our minds as we think through how do we package this so that a faculty member, someone who's passionate about social innovation can be a champion of this. So we've talked through what we like to call a competition in a box or a program in a box. And we basically, in our planning and in our execution, have put together basically, I would say, a library of tools, resources, checklists to support all of our university champions, all of our university administrators who run this in some capacity. Because again, usually they are not full-time trying to make this happen. They're doing this on top of other things. So one of the things we try to do is make sure that they can plug and play with various resources, everything from as little as the checklist and timeline that they need to be looking at to workshops, recorded workshops that they can push out to their students to make this easier for them to handle on top of other responsibilities. We provide templates for inviting judges to be involved in a competition like this. We provide a submission platform, which is complimentary for every university that joins the network. If you need a hub to be able to effectively manage your submissions, that's something we provide. If not, and they already have an existing platform, that's great. But again, this is something that's evolving. We really try and learn from our network and hear back on what do they need, what's most helpful as we try to better support them. One key thing that Juliet mentioned that we've piloted this year is basically looking at our network and thinking through how do we bring in the learning that they have, their expertise. So every month we have a unique topic that relates to the competition or social innovation in general, and we pull on our network, see who is doing what where across the border, in which country, and give them the platform to share their knowledge, their tools, their learning with the wider global network of administrators to enrich not just this competition, but basically anything that they're doing on social innovation on their campuses. That's, yeah, I would say in a nutshell what some of the things that we're doing to support university leads in particular.
Can you speak a little bit about the big show, the big event, right? So the way it works is we take turns every year. So one year San Diego hosts the global event, and then the next year St. Thomas does. Can you talk a little bit? It's a huge event, a 3+ day event, people flying in from all over the world, huge undertaking. Can you talk a little bit about how you've worked together to make that happen, especially being in different locations, different time zones, so many things going on at once? How have you managed that in the last couple of years, especially working virtually?
Yes, yes. Oh my goodness. I would say it becomes a beast of an undertaking. And I think Juliet, I would love for Juliet to speak to the University of San Diego side of things, because when we first joined, like Juliet said, when we were brought on, I think within weeks of that, we had our first global finals experience. And that was in person on the beautiful San Diego campus. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to San Diego? My goodness, in June, it's lovely. Plus, USD has a beautiful campus. So it was a really great introduction to the challenge and to see all the moving pieces, from the pitch times to networking opportunities for staff and faculty and for students or students that or the various innovators that were present at the time. And that in itself was a challenge. I mean, think through running a multi-day event. Now, with the pandemic, last year, USD had to pivot to a virtual format, which, again, that whole thing about learning from each other and building on our learning, they pivoted into such a great model that we're using that as our baseline as we plan this year's. And again, trying to, for the sake of our global network, what do we do? How do we make things even better? How do we engage our network? So this year, St. Thomas is hosting the global finals. We were really hoping to have people here in Minneapolis to show them this beautiful city that we call home. But of course, we couldn't do that. So we instead are doing a virtual global finals, and the logistics of managing teams from 15 countries pitching at different times. We'll probably have at least 40 teams that would then be funneled down into a shortlisted team of 12. Really, I would say it's definitely a great exercise for any brain. I think going into this, though, because we're in this virtual world, I would say the top 3 goals as we're looking to plan this. The first one was engagement. How do we engage people in this virtual environment? And that would be through things that really amp up the fun factor of our experience in the week that students come together to pitch and connect, but also to make it manageable in light of the fact that people are on screens all the time. So how do we really build things out in bite-sized pieces to fully engage people? I would say the second goal is thinking through learning and development. So one of the things that we're doing this year that we didn't have the opportunity to do last year is that we're doing some prep sessions and coaching for all global finalist teams from all our various universities leading up to the finals, so that they have the opportunity to connect and to learn, and hopefully even do some more polishing of their pitches before they have to finally present before judges. But beyond the global finalists too, we're also looking at our network of university admin, and how do we build learning through the offerings that we provide through that week where we celebrate all these innovations. And then lastly, I would say another goal for this year's global finals is retention and growth. We want our universities to love being part of this. We want them to be the champions, to say, hey, so and so university, you should be doing running this program on your campus. And also through the experience that students have, we hope that we're able to grow the footprint of this challenge to even more geographic areas. So this year, it's again a virtual experience, and it comes down to the nitty-gritty of planning schedules, thinking through which platforms we'll use. We've been doing a lot of research and have finally found one that we think would really give us the opportunity to amp up the connection factor, the fun factor, and learning as we go along. I think there'll be a lot of learning even at the end of the finals this year. So,
can I ask a little bit, a question more specific to the partnership? And this gets again into the nuts and bolts of how this works out. Can you talk about how the budget is spent on your program, between host year and non-host year? How do the two universities manage the expenses? I think that's an important part of the partnership. If people are considering doing something like this, I would think that might be a big question for people.
Yeah, great question. Julia, do you want to take the lead? I'll support.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of make one touch point on what you were talking about as far as planning the global finals and campus finals, a lot of the evolution of this partnership has been a yes and concept of, I love what you're doing. Let's see how we can kind of expand on that and build on that. So I love the ideas that Nania had said, that the learning beforehand, we had done workshops the week of, and students, the feedback we got was, this is great, but I can't incorporate this feedback into my pitch. And so the ability to tailor and serve students better in advance of that innovation week, in advance of that finals. So we will continue to grow, and the retention is such an important part of that as well. So, again, this is a beast of a finals event with almost 30 universities, each of whom send top 2 teams. We're looking at nearly 60 teams that could be joining us in June, anywhere from 40 to 60 teams.
And engaging over 100 judges, almost 100 maybe.
Exactly.
That time period. So, yeah.
Yes, for last year's final events, I think the increase was like a 200% increase in judge capacity to be able to serve the students. And we want to be mindful of judges as well in the time. Everyone has some Zoom fatigue. So kind of spreading that requirement around, it certainly is a big overhaul. So I do want to kind of honor that kind of component planning, logistical consideration. As far as the budget is concerned, that's something that we're working through also. We have a working agreement that we've had the leadership of each of our universities go through with a fine-tooth comb, sign. It's as kind of plain and when I heard Jessica say the logistics of, we're on Google and you're on and we're on Microsoft Teams, it doesn't really sound sexy or that big of a deal, but it actually, as far as our communication and coordination, it was a big hurdle to have to kind of vault ourselves over. And the same with this budget. So we've been pretty good, and having that kind of written working agreement has been helpful to be able to establish, okay, we have a shared marketing budget, and this is our allotment. If it's under this amount, then we can kind of proceed with confidence and charge forward. If it's over this allotment, then it's just an additional kind of T's crossed and I's dotted to make sure that everybody's in alignment. And then beyond that, as far as the seed funding awards for students, or the nominal university recruitment costs, and I do want to articulate, we do have a university recruitment fee, but by and large, this is not a money making for either one of our universities. This is a labor of love, and really was seen as an important project by a very important donor for both of our universities. And so we're not necessarily kind of hauling in the cash here on this award. Everything that we get, we're turning around and putting it back into the love of the program and for these students. So those are kind of the unsexy components of the budget, where we share marketing, and then the host university bears the larger brunt on, those production costs and the food budget and the and the t-shirt design and the gift boxes and everything like that, the myriad of things behind that.
I think that's a good point. So we have an MOU that we work off of that stays true year after year, and then we create an annual addendum, if you will, that really outlines the goals for the year. So that includes, information about the budget. So we agreed that the host university would assume more of the costs in the year that they host. And then, of course, it goes back and forth, right? And that stays pretty balanced. And then Juliet touched on some of the costs that we agreed to share. So marketing made sense because we're both benefiting from that. And so we both need to invest in it. Another shared cost we agreed on is that submission platform we talked about. So, we really went through the competition kind of line item by line item and said, what are some things that make sense to share every year, split the costs, and then what are some things that we want to switch off year over year depending on who the host university is, trying to keep it pretty fair and balanced year over year. So, one university isn't, blowing the bank on a big splashy global event with a huge keynote speaker one year, and then the other university, doesn't have the money and can't do it. So we try to really keep those things into consideration. And then every year we have a check-in meeting, kind of a retreat with each other, and then we can talk about what the, not only the budget for the coming year, but also what are our growth goals. And as Juliet mentioned, there is a nominal fee to participate in the competition. Who gets that money? We had to have all of those really hard conversations. Again, not sexy, but we're talking about partnership and is it worth partnering? Those are really important things that you have to be aligned on. And it did take us a little bit of time to figure that out. At first we're like, well, the host institution should get those fees because they are assuming a larger expense. But then we had the discussion, well, I worked hard to recruit that university, build that relationship. Should I get that money for myself? And, so we had these back and forth conversations, and I'm not saying there's one right or wrong way to do that, but it's just something that needs to be discussed when, you go into these partnerships, because let's face it, budget is huge, goals are huge, measuring and evaluation is huge. And those are all really important things that you need to discuss when you're entering into something like this, because ultimately that's what you're reporting back to the donor as well. So Nania, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think very well said between what you and Juliet have shared. Yeah.
Great.
Nothing more to add there.
Well, should we switch over to some of our future goals, or is there anything you want to touch on about the communications and networks? I mean, I think it isn't, when you have so many people involved, clear communication is really important. So I don't know if there's anything you want to speak to about how we communicate, year host year, someone takes a lead role where someone else kind of takes more of a support role. If you want to go into any more detail on that, I think we've touched on that.
I think so. I think we have. And I think that you raised an important point about the MOU, because I do think that kind of sets the baseline and helps to build in some of the systems and infrastructure to manage our communications and just the daily runnings of a partnership like this. So that's been key. And I would say definitely taking the time to take a step back and think through what are the key facets of our relationship and how do we set some boundaries around those. That helps, to set the stage for everything else, including things like communication and decision making. I would say communication and decision making, because it's really, that's the point of all of our communications, really coming to consensus on key things about the partnership.
Yes. And I will only add, we might be presenting a rosy picture, and I do want to share also that this is work, and I have, just from born out of recent conversations, I have a little posted on my monitor that says it might be easier to discuss over phone, just because each of our times are so valuable, and we have a multitude of projects that we're both working on, and in this COVID landscape, in our home life, working from home, the home is the office is the home. Sometimes it's just so much easier to connect 3 minutes on the phone instead of composing a 40-minute email.
A long email.
Yeah. So for me, in my workflow, I'm trying to do a better job of signing off when it's appropriate, which I'm not doing a good job on, but of also just having a way in which to kind of communicate that works for both of us a little bit better.
Yeah, so true. I think oh, sorry, Jessica, please go on.
I was just going to say, and extending grace to each other, especially right now.
Extending grace and
going back, we're all humans. Yeah.
Exactly. Assuming best intent.
Yeah.
Yes, true. Very true. Nothing more.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to sort of the final section of this presentation, which is really about growth goals, opportunities for the future. Of course, that when Ron brought us together, it was to build capacity, right? So we really need to show growth and that we're better together than we would be separately. And so these are always ongoing conversations. But when we first got together to talk about, hey, what could this look like? Let's dream big. Here are some of the things that we talked about. So first, it has to be said, you can have every plan in the world, and then something like a global pandemic hits and it just throws everything out of whack. So we did have to acknowledge that what we wanted isn't necessarily what we can have right away. So we kind of keep that in the back of our heads to give ourselves some grace, but also knowing that, the pandemic has presented opportunities too. So let's figure out ways to leverage that and maybe change some of the goals that we had around our new situation. But really, some of the things that we talked about is mapping out a 5-year plan with a few goals in mind. So building capacity of our university partners and supporting our administrators, knowing that taking on a competition like this isn't always appealing to a university administrator who has 9 million other things to do. So we've talked about how we've tried to make this plug and play, and we really just want to continue to build on that to make it really easy for universities to implement this and find value beyond the competition through our resources. We also talked about, this is kind of a long-term dream, but building regional networks and encouraging connections and growth beyond the competition. So we would love it if we had so many universities participating, we could have these regional hubs in different parts of the world. So maybe there's a European group and an African group and a South Asian group, and they have their own competitions, and then we all come together for the global competition. So we'd really love to just blow this out, and make it really increase our global reach. And also promoting and supporting alumni. And Nadia, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on this. I know you're very passionate about this.
Yes, I think it's a joint passion between myself and Juliet. And I know Juliet especially has this on her radar this year, speaking to some of the work division that we've even come up with, that, when one university is looking at hosting the global finals, the other university can be on the back end looking at some of these other things that we want to touch on but don't have the time to, and just kind of playing off of our strengths and attention there. But I think alumni are key to this in terms of being the champions for the program, but also hopefully cultivating a relationship that lives beyond the competition. One of the things I know the University of San Diego did so well last year was coming up with this idea to feature alumni through commercials. So really very well produced short videos that they can post on their website, share with their channels, and networks to build on and promote the work that they're doing. And also thinking through how do we leverage local resources or get connections with local partners to build upon what they've started to do through the global finals and through the network of social innovators once they do that June event. That how do we go beyond that event? I think I'll let Juliet speak to this because I know she's currently thinking through specific ideas on this as well.
Sure, sure. So as Nania had said last year in the COVID pivot of doing everything virtual, we thought of a wonderful idea to feature alumni through a couple different segmented commercials, and that was in part to kind of highlight some of the beautiful work that some of our alumni have done, and also to break up those 90-second fast pitches from our student innovators participating in the program, to kind of liven up the showcase in general. It was such a well-received component of the event that I think it's going to be a mainstay. And
of course, yes.
yeah. And I'm when I came on board in 2019, Nania, around the same time, both of us inherited either distribution lists or alumni lists or what have you. And I have put a student worker 100% on alumni is your focus. We need to get more connected with this cohort of people. And so now I have, it's the unsexy part of, we only have student email addresses. We don't have personal email addresses. So finding these people all around the world, where are they living now? What are they doing now? And so only now are we're doing a better job of actually reaching out to these people and kind of bringing them back into the hug, you could say. And we're also doing a better job of keeping people in the loop while they're still fresh. So this is the first year that we're piloting a women mentor program. So inherent within our competition, which has been a seed funding component, has been a specific award for companies that are founded or ventures that are founded with a woman innovator. And I am thrilled to be able to boast that last year we had 65% of our global finalists, this is the cream of the crop of the competition, that were women founders, which is exceptional. And it is so important to keep engaging with those women. So this is the first year that we're piloting a women mentorship program where we have the top 6 ventures from the cream of the crop from last year with women founders, participating in quarterly mentorship sessions with impact investors, with entrepreneurs, with kind of key players who can help mentor and guide these women. We put it 100% on these young innovators, the mentees, to drive the relationship, to be clear with what their asks are or what they need guidance on, and to follow up. But we maintain a quarterly kind of meeting to bring people together, and that has been really, really wonderful to be able to carry on that relationship with a lot of these people. And it's something that I certainly want to make sure that we are keeping going and maintaining year on year. One component also, at least as far as keeping in contact with the most recent seed funding winners, is we dole out 90% of our seed funding. When students win the award, the final 10% is kept for to be awarded 1 year later if the students complete 4 quarterly reports. So we are getting semi-regular, those quarterly reports where we can have a little bit of information on what these students are doing, if they're still continuing with their venture, are they paying themselves yet with their venture, or are they using funds for other means? What do they really need right now? How can we support them in their growth? And being able to collect data is really important. I will admit we're not yet at the capacity where we can kind of meet all of their needs or understand what their roadblocks are and help remove those for them. But I really do hope that, as we grow and evolve this competition, that will be more centered in how we move forward.
Yeah, and we heard that loud and clear from our donor too. The long-term support to keep these ventures alive, if that's what the founders want to do. How do we continue to support them after this competition to make sure that they're successful, and then measuring that success or not success, just so we have that data to really be able to measure the long-term impact of this competition. Because again, so many times these competitions are treated as an event, and so we really want to take it further and follow up with our alumni, measure their success, but then also find out how we can continue to support them to ensure that they are successful. And this is something that I don't think could happen without the partnership, because again, it's sort of another step in the process. And it's a lot of work. Like Juliet said, she has a student worker on it, and we do utilize student workers quite a bit to help with these sorts of projects. But again, the strength really comes in our numbers and our partnership to really take this further than just an event, just a competition. Anything else in closing? We only have a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, we are also happy to answer any questions you might have via email, or if you want to connect over the phone. We're always happy to share ideas, or if you have any specific questions that you'd prefer to ask on a one-to-one basis, we're happy to answer those by email or phone. Co-panelists, do you have anything you'd like to add in closing?
I would say, we've touched on the keys here. I think definitely, moving forward, this is such an enriching relationship, and it really goes back to the question that was asked before: is it worth it? I do think that it's so been worth it. It's exciting to see how we play off each other, and it'll be great to see how we build this going forward as well. Don't have much else to add. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to take them or connect offline as well. I'm checking the chat here to see if there's anything, but yeah. Great.
Well, I want to thank everyone for participating, and our viewers here, as well as my co-facilitators on this call. And it might not be within everybody's capacity to be able to engage in a dual university endeavor, but certainly being able to reach across your own campus, to de-silo the work that you're doing. That's something that you can certainly take away. I mean, I know as far as budget concerns here, this center is between the P school and the business school. So a lot of the kind of experiences that we're having here at USD, at least with my center, it's similar in that capacity. Those type of considerations of who's on first and who's the quarterback, and those are two different sports analogies, but as far as being able to share work in a meaningful way.
And I think, again, the value is in the lessons we learn from each other and the lessons we learn from our university partners. A lot of time we go to conferences or we compete at competitions, and we get to connect with those people and have conversations. But I think what we've created here is a way to keep those going and make those conversations much deeper. So it's not, I talked to this person at this event and, we exchanged a couple of LinkedIn messages. Here we've really created a system to keep communication open and to continue to grow in that. And
we just had a question come through. Yeah. Let's see.
Oh, that's a good question. Yep. Yeah, yes. Do you want to answer
Very good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That certainly exists. For Nana and I, we both came on in 2019, and the relationships that were held at the university level were not necessarily held by either one of us. So, especially in kind of networking and reaching out, the recruitment and retainment, those were all new relationships that were being formed. So it's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we might have 10 minutes before we're kicked out of this session. So, Nania, if you wanted to add anything to that question there.
I think it comes down to, if maybe adding it just quickly, really building something that is easy to be picked up, as quickly as possible. So the whole idea of the competition in a box or program in a box is something we've talked about, where hopefully even if people leave their positions in the universities that we've worked with, that the system is built strong enough that someone else can pick it up easily. And I actually was reading the question on both ends, not just in the universities that we recruit, but even internally, because our team has undergone some changes since we joined this wider collaboration, and really thinking through how do we keep those the strengths of those relationships going, to build the work, because at the end of the day, this comes down to a personal relationship with people, right? Connections at different universities, and sometimes someone holds that relationship. If they have to move on to something else, how do we make sure that there's a seamless transition, so that what we would call even clients, our university administrators and champions, feel like they're still being supported? So I was taking that both ways. I think it's a great question, and it's something that, we're definitely learning from as experiences come up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I try to make friends with more than one person at every university too.
Yeah, true.
Just in case.
Just in
but
case.
Again, if you get people excited enough where this becomes part of the fabric of the university, and the university sees the value in it, then whoever assumes that role or an adjacent role, likely the university will say, hey, this is a really important project, and want to continue with it. Especially if the students are really excited about it.
So. Yes.
And I think over the past 2 years, this year and last, definitely, we've done a good job of trying to highlight the university itself, and to kind of shine a light on the university itself, and share the love and the seed funding and the prizes to more students around. So that university administrators also see that it's more attainable, it's more feasible, and it's a worthwhile program to continue to run and host on their own campus, at least the first 2 rounds. But making more friends is always a good idea.
Well, we're happy to stay on and answer any other questions, but I know we're over time. So again, we'd just like to thank everyone for attending, and hopefully you learned some lessons that you can apply to any partnership, big or small. So thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.